Hello. On Tuesday, August 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern, we had begun filming this week's episode of Last Words. 20 minutes into filming, the news broke that Power Trip frontman Riley Gale had passed away. Many of our guests and crew were close with Gale, and the impact he and his band had on the metal community is indescribable. We ask that you forgive us for this week's shortened episode of Last Words. Welcome to another episode of Last Words here in the pit. I'm Jordan Olds from 2 Minutes to Late Night.
I'm Katy Irizarry from Season and Mist and Loudwire.
And I am Doc Coyle from the band Bad Wolves and host of the X-Man podcast.
And the E Street Band. We also have a very special guest this week. We got my dude, Nate Garrett from Spirit Adrift. Nate, how are you?
What's up, everybody? I'm good. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. You've been busy as hell in the quarantine.
Yeah, I've been busy in 2020, man. Lots of stuff going on, music related and just personal and everything. Cross country moves and
your new single. It's full of hope. It's got your dogs on the cover.
So the new album is Enlightened Eternity. It's coming out in October. $20 spin in North America and Century Media everywhere else. And that first single, it's funny, everybody talks about how hopeful that one is because that one's about like chaos magic and shit. That's kind of actually the most evil song on the album. But that's the only one on the album that's kind of, there's another song kind of about war, but all the other songs are pretty positive, I guess. And that one's positive too. I mean, it's kind of like using the whole chaos magic, weird, creepy Illuminati thing as a metaphor for like figuring out how to take charge of your own life, I guess. People seem to dig it, but people also seem to think they have the whole album figured out based on the one song. And trust me, you don't have the whole album figured out based on that song. Believe me.
You don't know yet. You didn't see the whole movie in the trailer. Calm down.
Nate, so I was, looking up the band, and it on Wikipedia it has you kind of pegged as starting as a one-man band. Is that the case? It start out just all you?
Absolutely, yeah. The first several recordings, it was just me playing all the instruments, doing all the vocals, everything. I'd
be an if I was good at everything. Like how do you maintain just hanging out with us normal folks? Just when you can just do everything, you just walking around and all these useless people taking up space.
Oh man. Well, first of all, you're far from useless, dude. I saw you guys play at Ozfest 2004. I was 16 years old. And it was badass. It was super badass.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just like to make music, and really I did that out of necessity, just from a logistical standpoint where I was at in my life. Me handling all the instruments was just kind of like the easiest way of doing it. I didn't have any expectations. I didn't even know if anybody would ever hear the early stuff. I was just kind of doing it for me. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just grateful, man. I'm grateful that people like it, and I'm grateful that I get to make music that I like. And people that let accolades change them are fucking weak, and I don't want to be like that.
Right on. Well, listen, I just admire anyone that has that kind of depth and versatility of skill, and I admire that. So we're not worthy.
Hey, it means a lot coming from you, man. Thank you.
Cheers, man. Cheers.
There is a trailer out for an A&E Ozzy doc. Nate, are you excited?
Yes. Yeah, I am. I watched it today in preparation for this, and it was really well put together. There is a 2011 Ozzy doc called God Bless Ozzy Osbourne. That's great. That's crucial viewing. I would recommend viewing that as a precursor to the new one that's about to come out, so you can compare and contrast, take notes, see what jives and what doesn't. I would also recommend reading this. Every single page of this contains 5 or 10 things that most people would never dream of doing in their entire lives. It's crazy, and it's pretty thick. It's a wonder this man's still alive. I'll watch anything relating to Ozzy. I love Ozzy with all my heart. He represents every fan of music that got to be involved in it in some way, and I love the guy. I'm looking forward to seeing the new documentary.
Hell yeah, man. Do you have all right, so you are outing yourself as like just a diehard Ozzy fan, like 2 favorite Ozzy solo albums and then 2 favorite Sabbath albums.
Oh man. Well, Black Sabbath is a band that got me into metal, but I think at this point, my like Sabotage was my favorite album, period, for most of my life after I heard it. And it still might be. Ozzy period Sabbath, I would say Sabotage and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath are my favorites right now, but I love literally all of them. Technical Ecstasy gets weird, but I think Never Say Die is like actually super underrated. For Ozzy solo stuff, Diary of a Madman, I think, is more solid than the first album, obviously. Yep. But out of those two, I would go with Diary of a Madman. And then I think the other one actually that stands out the most in his catalog, which is another album where he had a whole lot of help, shall we say, from Bob Daisley, the bass player, is No More Tears, the one from the 90s.
Yeah, man.
And Zakk Wylde, man, is like uncharacteristically like restrained on a lot of his solos, and it's just really soulful, and you know, he plays from the heart. He is showing off still, but it's a lot more emotional playing from Zakk Wylde, and then the songs are just really classic songs. Lemmy helped write a couple of them.
Yeah, it's about the pinch harmonics you don't hit.
Exactly. Yeah.
For me, the documentary, you know, I feel we saw like a little glimpse of it not too long ago. We talked about it in the show, but this one I felt gave a broader cast of characters. And what I found interesting was they have people from his past, but also people who have inspired him along the way. And from multiple decades, you have Marilyn Manson. It looks like they're John Campbell from Lamb of God, Post Malone. So it seems pretty interesting. I like how they kind of show how he's been intergenerational and his influences just transcended, different age groups and different generations.
I was very fortunate to do Ozfest in 2004 and, with the original Black Sabbath, and it was so mind altering and mind changing. I never got to physically meet him, but just seeing that heaviness and everything about that in person was absolutely incredible. And one thing I think that's really important about Ozzy is it's kind of crazy that he's maintained cultural relevance this long. I mean, the new Ozzy record performed really well. Obviously the Post Malone song went number one. I think he had broke some record between number one singles. And even the last Black Sabbath record, which I feel like people don't really talk about, I think is unbelievable. And so to kind of still be putting out pieces of work that still matter, and I mean really matter, like outside of our little circle, that kind of get out into the world, I think is really impressive. And I'm interested to see this documentary because, like you said, we did just have a documentary not that long ago, so I wonder what this says that one didn't.
Folks, we got to talk about like favorite Ozzy stories, because I don't think we've ever done that before on this show.
I have a favorite Ozzy story that I'm involved in, but just a favorite Ozzy story. I heard this. I think he talks about it a little bit in this book that I showed earlier, but where I really heard the full story is in that God Bless Ozzy Osbourne documentary. And Geezer Butler tells a story, because I've always been fascinated about the period of Black Sabbath there at the end of the Ozzy years when things were getting really sketchy. And I didn't realize that because he quit the band before Technical Ecstasy or before Never Say Die or both. And they just kept grinding. They get him back, and they were just a complete mess in every sense of the word. But they were going to do an album after Never Say Die. And I didn't realize that until I heard Geezer Butler telling the story. And they booked the studio time in LA. The whole band's in LA. Engineers are there in the studio, producers there. And Ozzy is supposed to be flying, I think, from the UK over to the States and then eventually winding up in LA to make the follow-up to Never Say Die. And they're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. They have no idea what happened to Ozzy. And as it turns out, somewhere in his itinerary, he was on a plane and he got so out of control that the police were waiting for him when he landed to take him straight to jail. And the specifics of the situation are unclear because obviously Ozzy doesn't remember it. And how are you going to get a hold of the people that were on that flight with Ozzy where he acted up? And this is the 70s. What do you have to do to get kicked off a plane and go to jail? Like, can you imagine what Ozzy was doing? But anyway, He shows up at the studio like a week or two late, and they're all like, "Where have you been?" And they find out, yeah, as soon as his plane landed, either in New York or LA, I'm not sure, he just went straight to jail and was in jail the whole time, couldn't get a hold of it. Needless to say, they didn't make a follow-up album to Never Say Die with Ozzy.
All right, so the Deftones have just announced their new album. They also released the first single from the album. The album is going to be called OHMS, OHMS. What's been really fascinating about this is not just the single release and getting to hear kind of the newer direction we've seen Deftones kind of taking with their last album, but they had a really intense and really original marketing campaign for this. Basically, it was like a full-on scavenger hunt, both digitally on social media as well as interactively, like on the streets of LA. And the band had been posting stuff, and hidden was like these encoded messages where one letter in each post spelled out the album title. But nobody knew that this is what they were doing and why they were highlighting these random letters, especially because it doesn't like spell a real word that I'm aware of. Then they had billboards like in Sacramento at like the Regency and in California, and they basically sent fans on an actual physical scavenger hunt where they had to take to the streets, and they had coordinates they had to go to and find the billboards, which, you know, had all kinds of messages. One about it seemed like some kind of a lyric and the date, which is obviously going to be the release date September 25th, if I'm not mistaken. And on top of that, there was another billboard that revealed somewhat of the image of the eyes. So I thought this was brilliant. I know this seems involved and intense, and when you're a band like Deftones, you can do involved and intense. I love a band that does a unique marketing campaign. We've seen Avenged Sevenfold did this once before with just like Avenged Sevenfold bat signals all over the skies, and Rammstein just did something similar prior to the release of their last record. So what do you guys think, though, from just I'm obviously in marketing and publicity, so for me, this is very exciting to see and gives me ideas. But I'm curious if you as fans or just someone who's not involved in that, how do you feel about this? Do you think it's overkill? Do you like it? How does this impact you, and what are your thoughts?
No, listen, I think what Deftones did and their marketing team was great. And I think, honestly, in today's day and age, you have to be creative. I think the marketing side of it is just as much a part of the creative output as the actual music or the music video or the photo shoot or the logos. Everything is really tied together, and it is a reflection kind of you know how much effort you're really putting in as a team, because I think people tend to, because you look at the members of Deftones, it's not like they're super active on social media. It's not like, you know, they have that element of them going for them. So I think bands should take note of things like this. And of course, every band is not going to have the budget or the staff of a band like Deftones, but you have to try and find unique and creative ways, because it's so hard to get attention, you know? So whatever you can do, I think we should all be taking note. And I think it's brilliant. And that's why they are kind of who they are, because they never do things like anyone.
I agree with you, Doc, 100%. Katy, you asked the question, is this overkill? And I would posit the theory that in 2020, there is no such thing as overkill with trying to get people to pay attention to your art. Because for whatever reason, even though we have more access to information, we have more access to each other than at any point in human history, it seems like people have never been less interested in cool shit. I don't know why that is. And I'm going to say something sad here, but we're all in this business, and we see how it works, and we know how it works. And this is sad but true. No pun intended. People are not going to buy your album or pay attention to your band simply because the music is good. It just doesn't work that way anymore. And that sucks, but that's just the way it is. And I feel like a lot of people, myself in the past included, are like, man, I feel like we're really good. Why does nobody care? And that's the question that keeps PR people and marketing people up at night, and people in bands up at night. And it's like what Doc said, you have to figure out ways of making people care. The music itself, unfortunately, is not enough. And I think that's probably why in 2020 we see so many bands with some kind of shtick. It seems like every other band in metal has some kind of shtick or costume or something. And I'm not hating it. I love Ghost. I love Magla, or however you say that, Ominous Circle. I love plenty of bands that wear costumes and have that sort of imagery. But you have to figure out a way to get people to care. And it takes a lot more than just writing songs, unfortunately. I wish it was that easy.
Man, Nate, I would love to be a publicist because I have very seldom encountered a band or artist who is that aware. I mean, I guess it's also a generational thing when I really think about it. But you actually, too, kind of took a risk, a PR risk with this new single where you picked the one that was the least consistent with the whole album. So you also kind of have where you've taken a risk, or not even necessarily a risk, but a leap and did something that you knew would stand out and is a little different. Because for me as a publicist, I'm not going to lie, when you first said that, I was like, oh boy, I advise my bands all the time not to do that, where I'm like, no, you don't want people to think you're going a different direction. And I kind of loved hearing from you, though, and hearing that you got a lot of positive feedback. I mean, I heard that, and I guess I didn't necessarily think the band went in a different direction entirely as much as they did just with one song. I kind of anticipated what you said, that the full Spirit Adrift album that's coming out will likely be more in the vein of what you've done already. But I appreciate that you took that risk, and I appreciate that you have this understanding where, yeah, man, I mean, this is an oversaturated market. Like you kind of touched on, people have ADD brain now, so they can't pay attention to everything, and they're just kind of stuck in this one little, their own little circles where they're not really expanding and checking out what's out there, and they're missing out on great bands just because they're new or they don't have the right marketing that catches their attention, whatever that might be. So whether it's something like with you guys where you just shocked people to get people to talk about it and played something that was different and use that to like get their attention, or something like the Deftones where they're like getting people interactive and getting the fans involved.